Welcome back, everyone. I'm Crane Bramp. You're all brainiacs, and we're back for month 2 of TNP Limitless 5 in a nutshell. We've got lots and lots of stuff to cover, so make yourself at home. The kitchen's fully stocked. Grab you something to snack on, have a seat, and let's catch up, why don't we? Last episode may have seemed a bit slow, but that was all in preparation to just mash that pedal to the metal, which we're going to do this episode. We start out the month with the Immersive Engineering mod. It's an early game ore processing and power mod that has this retro industrial feel to it, with multi-block big machines that stamp plates and crush ores. In its power generation, you use pliers and cutters to make wire and power poles, and have generators like windmills and water wheels. It's a really unique mod. However, it's not only a quest line for our book, so we got to finish it anyway. It produces some unique resources that we need, and steel is one of them. In Immersive Engineering, steel is a multi-step process. We begin with the coke oven, which is made out of coke bricks. You do it in a 3x3 square, and then you build this thing called an engineer's hammer, and it turns into a single block, the coke oven. Loading the coke oven with coal burns that coal and produces coal coke as a fuel for another multi-block called the blast furnace. It produces creosote oil used primarily to make treated wood used to build things such as the water wheel. The blast furnace is also a 3x3 but made with blast bricks. Hit it with the hammer, bam, it's a single block, we got our blast furnace. So it's a good time to talk about multi-blocks just as a side thing in Minecraft. These are simply objects that are made out of multiple blocks and take up more space. It's just a cosmetic thing. Sometimes you have to interact with them after placing the blocks with a specific object for them to fuse. Sometimes they do it when you just complete building it. It just depends on the mod. So back to steel production. The blast furnace you load with an iron ingot, and for fuel you use the coal coke in the furnace's fuel slot. This outputs an ingot of steel with slag as a byproduct. Slag has limited uses, and it's kind of meant to represent the impurities cooked off in the steel process. The coke oven only has limited storage for the creosote oil that it produces, and once it's full, the coke oven stops working. So I made a basic fuel tank from Mekanism, hooked up a fuel pipe pulling from the oven to the tank, and now we're collecting oil, and this has got like, I think 28,000 millibuckets or something like that. Use buckets to get the creosote oil out of the tank, and then make treated wood with those buckets and some planks inside the crafting table, and then use the treated stuff to create an engineer's workbench to progress even further in the mod. At this point, realizing that I'm going to need all my coal to make coal coke to make steel, I keep feeding my wood from my tree farm into the furnaces and just make charcoal. Made a quick coal generator and a metallurgic infuser machine from Mekanism. The infuser lets us make really base level mechanism parts like infused alloys, which is just iron ingots and redstone. These are like basic building blocks of the machines and Mekanism. We're fixing to start in that mod, so we're going to need a bunch of these. So first thing we're building with them, though, is an energy cube. It's basically a battery. You store energy in it. Energy is called redstone flux. Almost nobody calls it redstone flux. Everybody just calls it RF. But anyway, the energy cube stores the energy. We're going to be able to pull energy for it, and energy storage is something we're going to be chasing all series. Continued farming. Stupid Enderman kept showing up trying to steal my damn blocks. Went exploring and found a lavender fields biome with some inhabitants not happy to see me. Will you leave me alone? I'm all antisocial today. I just want to, explore. A couple more days spent mining and processing Mekanism-infused alloys and basic control circuits, and we have enough resources to build our first real power network, and we're going for wind generators. One of my favorite early game power choices. It's passive energy. You get plenty of energy out of it, and they're made basically out of iron, redstone, a little bit of osmium, and a few other scattered resources. Not that expensive in the scheme of things. Now, the way wind generators work is the higher you put them, the more energy they generate. So we're going to stick them at Y250, way up in the sky. We're going to build a bunch of ladders, nerd pole up, build a platform, and now we're going to need some kind of power distribution network to get all the energy from the windmills down to us. Looking in the pack, we have Xnet to the rescue. Xnet is a distribution network mod. It adds a single type of cable called a network cable. This network cable has 8 virtual channels inside of it, and each channel is capable of carrying and distributing a different type of item. Energy, gases, fluids, items, etc. This network can pull items out of machines, put them into other machines, and can do the same thing with storage. A good example would be a fluid channel. It could pull water from a source, like an aqueous accumulator, and then distribute it to machines on the network, all of them connected by these cables that needed water. Same with gases such as hydrogen and oxygen, and so on. The Xnet network is managed by a controller, which must be powered for the network to work and also connected to the cables. Now, every machine that you want to connect to the network, including the controller, is connected to the network cable by an item called a connector. A connector mounts to one side of the item, is configured to one of the channels, and the connector set to either insert items into the machine or storage, or extract them out of it. So, cables between everything, and then connectors attached to any item on the network, and then the controller manages all of it. Thus, we attach connectors to the controller, we connect the wind generator so we can pull power, and then we connect the energy cube and the metallurgic infuser with connectors. Except that on the energy cube, we're going to place 2 controllers. And that sounds a great time to talk about sides. A block obviously doesn't just have one side. It's got a top, a bottom, a north, a south, a east, and a west side. 6 faces. Some blocks, such as machines, have configurable sides. So you might have, for example, items coming in the top to be processed, energy coming in the back, a fluid coming in another side, and then a side outputting whatever you just processed. You can have machines that use all 6 sides for different things. The energy cube has 2 connectors because we're going to take the energy coming from the wind generators, insert it into the battery on one side, charging the battery. The other connector goes on a side set to output and will feed machines on the other side. So the battery is in line and charges and then provides power out to the machines. Note, there's a tier 2 version of this connector called an advanced connector that with one connector allows you to access all 6 sides using 6 different channels. Those are expensive to make. We're not there yet. Anyway, that's done. Whew. Next is backpack upgrades. We're using the mod Iron Backpacks, and it basically has backpacks that are upgradable through various tiers, requiring more exotic materials such as diamonds and getting bigger storage and the ability to have upgrades. Regular backpack upgrades to like a copper backpack, which upgrades to like an iron backpack, which upgrades to like a diamond backpack, and so on. We upgrade our backpack to diamond level and throw in an auto eat upgrade that auto feeds us as long as we have food in our backpack, and a magnet upgrade that auto pulls in items that drop when we're mining and farming, etc. Later on, we can even create filters that have a whitelist or blacklist for items to pick up in case you just want it to pick up blocks and ores and so on. Now that we have auto eat, we run into the kitchen, make some baked veggie platters as well as bottles of apple juice and stick that in our backpack. No more forgetting to eat. On an equipment kick, we break into the simple gear mod. Anything but simple, the mod adds a way to craft weapons and tools with materials, both vanilla and modded, like iron, gems, and crystals, and each of those items have a special ability. For example, you could make a pickaxe out of iron using the simple gear mod, and iron has an ability called magnetic that will pull items towards you, similar to what the pickup thing for the backpack is doing. Simple gear uses blueprints in the crafting table to make parts and items. It also has a repairing system where you create repair kits to repair your items instead of them breaking and then you making another. Each part, like an axe head or an item like a shovel, has its own blueprint. You make parts out of varying materials and then use an item blueprint to assemble those parts into the item. Spent like an hour going through all the materials in our drawers, checking their special abilities, deciding what I wanted to do, and this is what we came up with. For an axe, I made an emerald saw, which cuts whole trees in one hit. Note that some of the special materials didn't have an ability that helped an action like, for example, cutting down a tree. So I just made those out of emerald for the durability that you get, and because I have so many emeralds from the Goblin Trader, like so many. Made both a regular pick and a hammer. The hammer mine's in a 3x3. Made the regular pick out of emerald, but the hammer I made out of white diamonds since it has a higher mining level and a really, really good durability.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Welcome, my friends, to the Sidetrack Lounge on our flagship, the USS Detour. Seems like a great time for a tutorial about mining levels in Minecraft. Minecraft has mining levels. Higher level materials cannot be mined with a pickaxe of a lower mining level than is required for that ore. For example, you cannot mine diamonds with a stone pickaxe. You have to use iron, which means you have to get a smelter, process the iron ore, etc. There's a whole process, and this is carried forward in modded Minecraft to a new level. Since there's new ores that require new tools made from new processed materials, it can get a lot. Mining is easy though. You want your mining tool, pickaxe, hammer, whatever, made out of the material with the highest mining level that you can make, and have enough of that material to repair the tool. If you've got 3 diamonds to make a diamond pickaxe and you don't have any more diamonds to repair it, you'll probably do fine with an iron pickaxe unless you really need it for something specific like grabbing obsidian. Iron in this pack has a mining level of 1, emerald has a mining level of 2, but white diamonds, which I had a small stash of and was getting them on a semi-regular basis while mining, had a mining level of 4. And a really high durability, like in the thousands. Thus, why I chose it for the hammer. And there you have it, mining levels, in a nutshell.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
To finish off our tool production, we did an emerald mattock, which is like a hoe and a shovel in one for farming, and an excavator, which is a shovel that digs a 3x3 square. We've got a lot more island leveling to do. We're probably going to build out this whole island, and that excavator will come in handy. Power's done, and it's time to start into automation and machinery, and I want another floor to start fresh. Been mining a bit every day, especially collecting diorite, granite, and andesite, making those into the polished versions of them for building, and we get started. Builder Wands is always doing that heavy lifting. Builder's Wands is a mod that allows you to make wands that duplicate blocks in a group that they're pointed at, using blocks out of your inventory to build. Higher level wands made out of more exotic materials such as diamond duplicate more blocks at once. They even have an undo where you can undo it back. I think diamond will do 128 blocks at a time. For the ceiling, you can see I just lay down a full line of what I'm using for the floor or ceiling, and then the wand duplicates the entire row in one click. Ceiling's laid down in under 60 seconds. Happens the same with the floors. It'll, like, you can lay down a floor plan and then like nerd pole up, and it'll duplicate the top of the floor plan so you can lay down walls and stuff with whole rooms. It is a lifesaver. Taking a break from building, I want to get the foundation started for the Mystical Agriculture mod. This is a mod which allows you to create and farm plants that provide you with a resource called Inferium. This is your base material for the entire mod, and you're going to need a lot of it. You can find it as an ore, and some mobs drop it when they die. There's also a new ore called Prosperity Ore, which drops prosperity shards, and more on those in a moment. So this might be easier to explain just looking at our quest line for this. The mod basically has 3 game loops, I guess you could say. One is processing Inferium to make higher level versions of that. 2 is using these various levels of processed Inferium to make items, such as forges, weapons, and armor. And finally, you can craft seeds to plant mystical plants that, when you harvest them, can give you resources. This last step literally lets you grow iron, redstone, and even automate the process. However, this questline does not include resource production, but the bee questline does, allowing all our bees to produce those resources via their comb. So we're going to be using bees to provide our resources, and concentrate on Inferium refining and all these item creation quests. Inferium processing. Oh boy. So you take Inferium, you craft an infusion crystal, and then in the crafting table, you take 8 Inferium surrounding that infusion crystal, and this makes 1 Prudentium, the tier 2 version of this resource. Note that this crystal has durability. You're going to be making more of these. So there are 5 tiers of Inferium processing, and this 8-to-1 progression holds true through the mod. So Inferium is your base, 8 Inferium make 1 Prudentium, 8 Prudentium makes 1 Tertium, 8 Tertium makes an Imperium, and finally 8 Imperium make 1 Supremium. Screw that, we're automating this shit. So we make a garden cloche. This is basically an automated plant grower. You put in a block to grow the item like soil or sand, a seed, feed it some power, water, and optionally some fertilizer to increase the grow rate, and it outputs whatever the seed outputs, and as a side product, the occasional seed for the plant. We just throw a drawer on the front, and it starts dropping Inferium in the box. We take this and begin processing it higher. Later on, we can even automate this crafting process, but for the moment, it's all by hand, and even automated with just 1 cloche, it's going to be slow. It's really good to get starting now. Speaking of bees, it is time to get busy. The mod in this case is Resourceful Bees, and the mod adds a ton of different bee types to the pack, such as bumblebees, which you can ride as mounts, lumberjack bees, which produce wood chips as a resource that you can combine to make logs, even exotic bees like iron, copper, and diamond bees that produce honeycombs that provide these resources to you when run through a centrifuge. There are new hives which you can find scattered throughout the world, and a whole series of new bees that you breed to make even more bees. A huge mod with tons to explore, full automation, more. So let's go. First thing, I designed a floor plan for a bee house. This is set up where there are individual 3x3 rooms. Floor is grass so we can plant flowers as food for the bees, and the sides are glass so we can see in and they can get sunlight. We get 12 rooms per floor, and we can just build straight up until we have all of the bee varieties enclosed. Everything will be in one place, and it should be easy to automate since it'll all be fairly compact. All your information about bees is gleaned in-game. Look up a bee, and there's an information tab. It'll tell you where they're found, what type of nest they prefer, what type of resource they want to eat. Some bees use flowers for food, some don't. Copper bees, for example, use blocks of copper. Iron bees use blocks of iron, and skeletal bees use blocks of bone. Bees can also be bred to make exotic bees that are rarer to find in the world, or might not even exist. The bee game loop kind of goes like this. First, there are what I call the natural bees. Tier 0, you can create natural nests that spawn these bees. For example, I can take a log, a wooden sword, combine them in the crafting table, and have a log with a hole in it. I put that down, hit it with a honey treat that I crafted with some honey and a honeycomb. A timer starts, and when done, a random basic bee appears. Basic bees include blue banded bees, yellow carpenter bees, and so on. These produce honey and regular honeycombs, but absolutely nothing special. But you can take 2 of these, and it varies, place them in a room, feed each of them a flower, and aww, little little bitty baby bee, so cute. As you can see, the bees had a child. Pat, pat, good boy. Depending on the bees you combine, you get random bees out. Did this and ended up with some skeletal bees producing bone meal, copper bees producing copper, iron bees producing iron, some lumberjack bees producing logs, and a few others. These bees I put in a room with whatever flower they needed and an advanced beehive. This holds bees and several stacks of whatever resource they produce. For now, I'm gathering by hand, but with the advanced beehives, we can automate this process later with pipes to pull all the produced items automatically and then process them. Trying to keep it mixed up, I went exploring, found a wizard tower, and got attacked by Dr. Dirti Pheet. Regardless, he got pwned, we raided the tower, found a nether altar on the way home, and even ran into some illagers. Had to spend a bit sorting out my inventory in the illager house. So much loot. Anyway, back to the bees. Collected my bee quests and got awarded a random hive and got a nether hive for crystalline bees making nether quartz. Yeah. So these special hives only attract the bee that in the biome that they live in. This is for nether bees, so off to the nether we go, drop it down, and after a bit, we have our first crystalline bee, gather him up, take him back, put him in an advanced bee house by himself. We'll get 2 more that fills up that room with 3 nether bees, and now they're producing quartz for us, along with honey and regular honeycombs. Next, we need to set up honeycomb processing, which is done through a centrifuge. There's a higher tier powered version of the centrifuge, which I have enough stuff to make. Needing power, I don't want to run a line all the way from the big room, and I noticed that we have a quest line for a solar power mod. So I make an energy cube for a battery, some cables, I build a small porch out to put everything on over at the bee house, and after a bit of fiddling, it's done. So, give me an explanation. Items get pulled from this dump chest into the centrifuge, which processes them, produces liquid honey, which goes into this tank over here, and resources out to this chest. It's all powered by the solar, which charges the cube so that it has power to continue running overnight. Basic automation done. With bees now started, we've still got a long way to go. I'd like to get started on Mekanism ore processing. So with Mekanism, you can process ores to double them, triple them, and even go all the way to ore quintupling, which for every ore you process, you get 5 ingots or whatever the final form of that ore is. Mekanism has a whole series of machines and systems to process ores, and some are quite complex and energy hungry. Luckily, the mod also has power production. So let's just take a look at some of the ore processings. So tier 1 is just basic. You have a machine called an energized smelter. You feed it ores and power, and it works just like a regular furnace, smelting ores into a single ingot. Tier 2 doubles ores. It adds this new machine to the mix called the enrichment chamber, which just requires power. You take an ore, feed it into the enrichment chamber, it produces 2 dusts, each of which smelt down into an ingot. So 1 ore, 2 ingots. Tier 2 triples ores. Gets a little bit more complicated, and that's what we're doing. You start with a single ore, feed it into a new machine on the line called a purification chamber, which requires power and oxygen. The purification chamber produces 3 dirty clumps, which go into the enrichment chamber, producing 3 dusts, which smelt into 3 ingots. Oxygen is produced by another new machine, the Electrolytic Separator. So you feed water into this, it splits it through electrolysis into hydrogen and oxygen. So setup kind of goes like this. You're going to create a source block, just an enclosed block of water. I'm using trapdoors to save space, and you put an electric pump on top. Put the electrolytic separator a few blocks away and run a fluid pipe from the pump to the separator on top so that you're moving water over to it. You craft 2 gas tanks and put those on either side of the machine connected to it. Run power to everything, and then this is what happens. The pump sends the water to the separator. The water in the block doesn't run dry, which produces hydrogen and oxygen, which are outputs out the side of the separator to these tanks, which store them. I make an extra oxygen tank so that when the one here is full, I just replace it with a fresh one, and then you can take the oxygen tank, put it in the purification chamber, and it'll use that oxygen while we're waiting on another tank. Yes, I could set this up through Xnet, and we will do that later. I just don't want to mess with connectors and all that stuff right now. I just want to get it working. We'll worry about distribution later. And there's our working ore tripler. Ore comes in the left-hand side and comes to a new machine, the purification chamber, which needs the oxygen we're producing, and it goes right down the chain like we just talked about, and you get 3 ingots out the other side. Nice. Note that tier 3, where we quadruple ores, gets way more complicated. We need a full thermal evaporation plant with huge evaporation towers to produce hydrogen chloride, which we have to spin in centrifuges. There's several new machines, and it's going to take a moment before we get there, but we are headed there. Throughout the month, we've of course been mining, farming, smelting, gathering resources, exploring and finding villages, and all the normal Minecrafty things. Did a lot of bee breeding, and we have some basics like nether quartz, bone meal, copper, iron, a couple of others, and even got a second floor with the bee house. Probably going to need several more. We've got a lot of breeding to do, and the Beehouse will likely be, I'd say, 6 to 8 levels high when we're done. Producing all the materials and fully automated. In time. So power's done. We're well into automation and ore processing, and our Inferium production is all up and running. But where will we go from here? Well, that's the big question, is it? And there's one simple way to find out, and that's to hit that big red subscribe button, get notified on all my videos, and watch them. Or just go away, don't subscribe, and miss out on the greatest opportunity this side of breaking your leg in 6 places. Anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. A special thanks to my Patreon members who make all this possible. And I'll see you next time on TNP Limitless 5 in a nutshell.